Hi, Girl Scouts. So it's so nice to see you. I am Katie Herstein with Girl Scouts of Colorado, and I am the program and events manager at Girl Scouts of Colorado. And in my job, I get to be the lucky person to host this virtual series of Inspiring Futures, where we introduce Girl Scouts to a whole wide variety of accomplished women in a whole bunch of different professions so you can get inspired about what your future might look like. So we have a wonderful partner working with us, College Invest, and we have a short video to show you of an introduction to College Invest.
Hi, Girl Scouts. We're here at the Girl Scout Dream Lab with Angela Bio. Angela is the CEO of College Invest. I've participated in a lot of the Inspiring Futures programs, but my favorite was the one with people from SeaWorld because I would like to work with animals someday. Lily, what's been your favorite? My favorite Inspiring Futures video is going back to Bloom, and I like pictures for the circus because I've always wanted to know how the lights work and or what moves them. Angela, you are Ari. What future career inspired you?
That's a great question, Lily. When I was a young girl, I dreamed of working at the Denver Zoo, and I actually got to do that when I turned 30. But what's most important at your age is to be able to see that anything is possible. And with Inspiring Futures, presented by College Invest, you get to meet some amazing women. Women are doing things like working with animals, racing cars, catching criminals, helping those in need, and so much more. And did you know that you can do the Future Me Patch program at home with your caregiver? And it's a fun way to take a deeper dive on what your future may look like. And not only is this patch glow in the dark, but we'll also give you $100 in your College Invest account to help make your dreams a reality.
Let's be inspired.
All right, so just a few more words about College Invest. So College Invest is Colorado's college savings program. So it makes it easy for Colorado residents to save for their education past high school. So it's kind of like a piggy bank where caregivers, birthday money, grandparents, or anything that you might want to, they could put money into, or babysitting money, you could put money into your College Invest account, and it grows and grows and grows. And by the time you need to use it for education past high school, it's there for you, and you don't get taxed on it when the dollars get taken out of that account. And it can be used for college anywhere across the country, apprenticeship programs, trade schools. So it's a really worthwhile program to get invested into now, so your money can grow and help pay for education after high school. So we'd love to have you use the chat room, or you can raise your hand, your Zoom hand, or you can unmute and talk to us too, well, through the session. And next, sorry, I've lost my little cursor. There it is. We are going to do the Girl Scout Promise and Law. So feel free to unmute with me if you want. On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. And then the Girl Scout law is I will do my best to be honest and fair, friendly and helpful, considerate and caring, courageous and strong, responsible for what I say and do, and to respect myself and others, respect authority, use resources wisely, make the world a better place, and be a sister to every Girl Scout. Awesome. So what we are all here for is to talk with Marissa. So Marissa is a professor and chair at the University of Colorado in Boulder in the College of Arts and Science. So she has had quite a wonderful career, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can meet Marissa, and she can tell us all about what it's like to be at the University of Colorado in Boulder. Hi, Marissa.
Hello. So let me see if I can, sometimes I have to do the share screen in the right order. So let me see if I can get it.
Yeah.
Correct. Where? Oh, there it is. It moved. Okay. So see. So what do you guys, okay, now let's see, that's just the, so can you see the slides now?
We see your main slide up top and your other slides are down at the bottom.
Okay, so let me.
But up at the top, it says use slideshow.
Yeah, so that's what I did, is the slideshow. Let's see here. Still crazy? Not quite right?
Well, how about up at the top? It says use slideshow. Oh,
it should be the same thing.
Yeah, it should, shouldn't it? But
yeah, so I think I have to do it in a different order. Let me just try seeing if I can make it work in the other order. I go like this. I go just. Oh. Well, this happens. And I haven't been teaching enough lately, so I don't remember what the order is.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you see now?
Not just you.
Oh. Okay, that's weird. All right. Well, maybe what I'll do is just do it like, let me do this. Maybe I'll just do this and then I will just do it like view normal or view like, no. This is the way to get this. There we go. Way to get that gone. So that's probably, wait a minute, where'd my slides go now? Good grief. Oh, it looks like somebody else is there. No.
Looks like you're on a new.
Yeah, let me, sorry.
That's okay.
Somehow it went to the master instead of the actual presentation. Let me try this one more time. The 5th time is the charm, right? All right, let's go here. Let's go here. All right, I'm just going to do this. There. That looks okay, right?
It sure does.
Okay. It's not perfect, but that's okay, which is how life works sometimes, right?
Yes.
So this is me. Thank you for inviting me. And I just want to tell both Rebel and looks like somebody named Diane joined us that if you have a question, just shout out anytime. I'm a little bit what grade are you in, Rebel?
I'm in 5th grade.
Okay, so you're at the top of the chain in elementary school, right? Okay, so this is just a little bit of background about me. So I live in Colorado now, but I actually grew up in Indiana. So I grew up down here in Jeffersonville, Indiana. And so when I was in high school, I worked really hard and got really, really good grades. So I actually was like, had the best grades out of everybody in my high school class. And so that's called valedictorian. So that was me many years ago, getting the best grades that I could. And then when I was like your age, I did track and I did cross country and I did dance and I did ballet. And I think that doing all of those things, and I did some Girl Scouts too for a while, doing all of those things outside of school was really important for just, being happy and doing lots of fun things besides just school. But some of those things that you do outside of school, you end up learning sort of important ways to talk to people and interact with people that can be very important later in your career, in your life. The other thing that I think is kind of key for me is that both of my parents were math teachers. And so growing up, I always knew that I could do math and that I could be pretty good at it. So, and I think that was kind of important for my career that I do now. So after I finished up with high school, I went to college. And so that's where you get a degree that's called an so-called undergraduate degree. So you go to college and you get these degrees called Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts. And so when I went to college, I went to Indiana University, which is here in Bloomington. And this is just a picture of the campus on college. And I studied biology when I was in college, but I also studied French. And part of the reason that I studied French was because I had done ballet, and all ballet terms are in French. So I thought it was good to learn some French. And so when I started in college, I was doing a biology major, and I thought that I wanted to go to medical school and become a doctor, like your pediatrician that you go when you're sick and for your healthy. That's what I thought I wanted to do. Somebody chatted. Oh, Diane, I love math, yes. And so, but then in my last year, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to work in a research laboratory to do research. And the research that we were doing was actually studying like microorganisms or like bacteria that grow. Does that make sense? Like molds, microorganisms. And so I was working in the lab of this guy here whose name was Norm Pace. And we got to go to Yellowstone National Park, which is in Wyoming mostly. And so we would go out and collect samples from the national park. And then we would take them back to the lab, and we were trying to study all of these different microorganisms that were there. And so this experience when I was a student in college really got me excited about doing research. I really thought that I would do, biology is super fun. So I really thought that I would do, I changed my mind and decided to go to graduate school instead of medical school. And so after that, so I should say that I'm going to tell you kind of what happened, not just in my work life, but in my home life, so that you can kind of see how they go together, right? So when I was in college, I met my husband, and he's here. His name is Donnie. And this was back many years ago. And he was a graduate student when I was in college. And when he was a graduate student, the lab that he was working in, they moved to Colorado. So that was when I decided to go ahead and move to Colorado and start my own graduate research, my own schooling for graduate school. And so that's how I landed in Colorado. And I have to say that I don't necessarily recommend following a boy across the country when you're making plans for your career. But I will say that it did work out. Like if you're smart and you work hard, I think you can go a lot of different places and you'll be successful. It's about that working hard part. So then when I got to Colorado, I worked in a lab, and the guy, my sort of mentor, his name is Jim Sakella. And this is kind of where we worked at the time. And it was at a health sciences center. So it was at a medical school, but I wasn't really working with people. I was doing research on mice. I was learning about genetics. Have you heard of genetics before? Like DNA? Yeah, so you've heard of that. Okay, so that's kind of what I do, is I study DNA for humans. But it turns out that your DNA for humans and mice are very, very similar. I know it's kind of crazy to think about, but we have a lot of the same genes that mice have. And sometimes you can try to study the biology and how things are working in the brain or in the liver or in other parts of the body using mice as a way to study the mechanism and the underlying biology. And so we were doing a study where we were using mice to study behavior. And as part of this program, I was collaborating with these two guys who were at a related but different school. And so, so it was just a great opportunity. Basically, I spent 4 years doing research and taking advanced classes to get this. It's called a PhD. So a doctorate of philosophy. So they consider me a doctor, but it's a different kind of doctor than like a medical doctor. So after that, so basically my whole career after I got my PhD has been this idea. My lab actually studies behaviors related to substance use disorders. So things that you don't ever want to really do, like smoking or vaping or drinking alcohol. So we're trying to understand some of the genetics, the DNA and the biology that contributes to that. But we use animal models. We use animal models like mice. So here's a little mouse in a cage. And you can see that, oh, somebody's chatting a lot. Okay. So you can see that this mouse has 2 different bottles. And so the mouse can choose to drink from this bottle that has alcohol or this bottle that has water. And it turns out that some mice like to go to this bottle and some mice like to go to that bottle. It's kind of the same thing could be true for sugar. So we use them as a way to study biology that we think is similar, that we know is similar to what happens in humans. And then we also use lab experiments to understand the DNA. Does that kind of make sense so far, I hope? Okay, so then after I finished got my PhD, a lot of times you have to do even more training, what they call a postdoctoral training or postdoctoral fellowship. So it's post getting your doctoral degree. And so that's when I came up to the University of Colorado. And this is the Institute for Behavioral Genetics, which is at the University of Colorado. And so everybody who works at this institute studies genetics, and they study it relating to behaviors. So sometimes some people are studying relating to learning, like reading disabilities or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or depression and anxiety. And my lab studies substance use disorders. And so when I got up to IBG, that's what it's called, Institute for Behavioral Genetics, that's when I started doing more research with human data, human genetics. And again, so my main mentor was this guy, John Hewitt, but I had other mentors who helped me become even more skilled. So then eventually, so I kind of went through here, wanted to kind of tell you what's happening. Oh, I don't have I have animation, but it's not going to work because of this setup here. Oh, well. So in 2003, my oldest son was born. That's Nathan, when he was a baby. And right after he was born, I was hired in a faculty position at the college. So when you're at the college, you have different stages that you're trying to sort of get promoted and grow up in your career. And so I started out as an assistant professor, and I'm in the Department of Integrative Physiology. And that was right after Nathan was born. And then 3 years later, his little brother, Zach, that's his brother, Zach, was born. And then finally in 2010, a lot of times it takes about 6 or 7 years before they promote you. It's like getting a raise, sort of a big raise, and you have a more important title. And so that's when I became an associate professor with something called tenure. And so when you become a college professor, tenure is kind of a big deal. It means you have a really stable position. So I kept working and doing research and teaching. And then in 2021, I was kind of recruited to become the chair of our department. And so that means that I was supervising everybody in our department. And we have 20 other research faculty, and we have 10 teaching faculty and 8 staff. So I supervise a pretty big group. And then last year, I was promoted again to full professor. And instead of just being interim chair, now I have a full chair term. So this chair thing is kind of a leadership position, which goes back to what I was saying about doing all those other things besides just school, where you kind of like when you do like in Girl Scouts, you have to get along, right? You have to work together with the other girls that are in your group and in your troop and do teamwork and figure out. And that's those are the kinds of skills, the kinds of characteristics that made it so that people wanted me to be the chair, is basically getting along with people and helping people get along with each other. So this is just me showing you, so as part of my lab, I have graduate students and I have undergraduate students who work in my lab doing the experiments in the lab. And so this is kind of the first group of people here who were in my lab. This is my first graduate student who I trained to earn her PhD. And then I had a couple of undergraduate students who were working in the lab. And this was a postdoctoral fellow who worked in the lab. This guy here was visiting our lab for a year from Germany. So sometimes we have people coming over from all over the world to learn how to do the science that we do. This guy here, Xavi, was a postdoctoral fellow a few later, and he was from Spain. So this is just an example of how the lab, changed over the year, but it's really fun for me because I get to work with these young people. Could you train us? Yeah, we have undergraduates. We have students who work in my lab still. That's what so right here, you remember during COVID when you had to do everything on Zoom. This is just a picture that we took of our lab meeting because we couldn't all come together in person like we do now. And so this was our lab meeting just a couple of years ago during 2020. And these are the people who were in my lab at that time. And then down here, these are my current graduate students. These are my 3 students who work in my lab doing experiments now. So it's really fun because you get to train people and then you get to see them grow up and learn things and go on to their next career stage. So for my job, a lot of people think that when you're a college professor, that the main thing you do, like when I meet someone, they always say, oh, what do you teach? Because that is a big part of what you do when you're a professor, is that you teach students. But it turns out that when you're at a big university like the University of Colorado, where we also do research, it's considered an R1 university, research level 1 university. Basically, about 40% of my time I spend doing teaching, 40% of my time I spend doing research, like I was kind of telling you about, and then 20% of my time is spent doing service. And so that's sort of a typical thing for a professor. And so and it is fun because you get to you're not just doing the same thing every day, you get all kinds of different things. So for my teaching, when I would teach undergraduate students and I taught them statistics. So it's basically math, advanced math. And I also teach a graduate class, and the graduate class that I teach about is called Bioinformatics and Genomics. So it's kind of how to use these really cool websites that are available from scientists to be able to understand the genome. And then, like I said, I have students who work in my lab, so I mentor them and train them. And then on the research part, I already talked about how we do human studies to try and find genes and understand people who have substance use disorders. We also use mice and rats. The other things that you kind of aren't as necessarily the part that's not as much fun is that in order to do the research, it costs money. So I have to write grants to the government, the National Institutes of Health. So I have to write grants that say, here's the research that I want to do, and here's how it's going to benefit society. Here's how I'm going to use the money. Here's what we're going to learn. And then they have to give me the money to be able to pay for the mice, to be able to pay for the lab equipment, to be able to pay the students who do the research and that kind of thing. And it's very hard to get grants. And then once you do your studies, you also write papers that describe the study that you did, and you publish those studies in research manuscripts. And you also present, kind of like I'm presenting to you now, you also present your research at conferences. So one of the fun things is that you do get to go to conferences, usually a few conferences every year. So you get to travel both in the United States to different cities, and you meet people from all over the world. You get to go to other countries to present your research. So while I've been doing my research over the last 20 years, I've made a lot of friends who are in different countries. I have one person that I work with quite a bit who's in Finland, and I have people that I have worked with in Germany and England and all over the world. I have some great collaborators who are in St. Louis in Missouri. So that is super fun. That's one of the things I really like about science, is that you get to really meet with brilliant people from all over the world. And then the other part of your job is like what they call service. And so it's mainly kind of serving on committees. So some of those things are committees where we make sure that we're doing a good job training our graduate students. I'm currently the chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So we're trying to take a lot of steps to make sure that we are making our research opportunities and our training opportunities available to all people, from all different backgrounds and colors and beliefs. And then I also, now that I'm a senior faculty member, I mentor faculty who are more junior than I am. Now, the thing I should say is that now that I am the chair of my department, I don't really have much teaching responsibility. So now I actually do 60% service, which is not exactly the most fun thing in the world all the time, but it is an important job. And it's important for us to have women in these kinds of leadership positions. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what college classes are like, because I'm not sure if you're probably have mostly the same teacher all day. Maybe you go to a different teacher for math or science or something like that. But in college, you have a different teacher for every class, which you will also have probably like in middle school and in high school. But the other thing about college is that you don't go to every class every day, and you don't go to class all day long. So usually, when I teach undergraduate students, I meet with them 3 days a week. And 2 of those days, I give a lecture, although we try to make it interactive, so they have to answer questions during the lecture and that kind of thing. And then on the 3rd day, they go into a smaller room, into smaller groups, where they're kind of working on their homework assignment. And their homework assignment always involves a little bit of coding and to do the problems in the statistics class. And so those are smaller, and I have teaching assistants who help me with teaching the students during those classes. And then when you get, after you go on, if you go on to graduate school, after you get your bachelor's degree, those courses a lot of times are, there's a lot less homework sometimes, and there are more projects. So a lot of times what happens is the class will only meet 1 or maybe 2 days a week. And at the beginning of the semester, everybody picks a topic, and then they come to the class on their assigned day, and they are kind of the teacher for that class. So that's kind of what we do with teaching. And then this is, like I said, with the service, we do committees. I serve on committees. And then in our department of integrative physiology, we are the main pre-health major. So many of our students want to be doctors, they want to be researchers, they want to be physical therapists or physician's assistants. And then now I also participate in some of the leadership at the college level because I'm the chair of our department. So I have to kind of go up to the higher up people and try to speak up on behalf of our department and the things that we need, if that makes some sense. So I can show you just, I put a few videos in here just so you can kind of see what some of our experiments look like in the animals. If you want to see that, do you want to see that? Let's see, you guys. Okay, so Rebel says yes. So this is maybe, hi Diane. This is maybe a little bit more complicated than what we necessarily need to know. But like I said, we, since my lab studies drug use behaviors like smoking and alcohol or vaping, it's important for us to know that people don't just start drinking alcohol and all of a sudden have a problem with it. They usually go through a process where they sort of try it, and then it makes them feel a certain way. And then they may or may not go on to use more. They may or may not use it improperly or become dependent on it. But it's important to see that it's a process, and that at the end, once you really become dependent, it leads to disease. And so that could lead to liver disease. It could lead to some brain problems and lung disease for smoking behaviors. But the other thing that we know about all these behaviors is that while there are different parts of your DNA and different genes that contribute along this pathway to your risk for disease and dependence, we also know that your environment is important. So like your home, what your parents are doing with you and demonstrating to you, your classes that you're in, your students, your peers that you're hanging out with, the friends that you're hanging out with. And then if you're participating in other activities like Girl Scouts, probably the Girl Scouts are making good choices and not even getting involved in this kind of stuff. But it's very difficult to study because it's so complicated along the way. And so what we did many years ago is that we found some genes, and these genes are called CHRNA5A3. And these are basically genes in your brain, or they're genes that make proteins in your brain. And what we found is that some people have some versions of this gene that make them more or less susceptible to having a problem with smoking, to becoming addicted to smoking. But in our case, what we really found is that they were associated with, some of these variants were associated with whether or not people tried smoking. And so these are some of my former students who did this work. And this is an example of kind of what the front page of a research article looks like. after we've done a big data analysis. We have all these people who are, that's why I said we have all these people from all over the world who've been involved in this project when it was published in a manuscript. And so now what we're doing is that, I don't need to give you a lot of detail, but there's a particular variant that's in a particular gene that's expressed, that's the gene, the protein is in your liver. And we know that people who have this red version are more likely to drink more alcohol. And people who have this blue version are less likely to drink alcohol. And so what we did is we made a mouse that has the red and the blue version. And we asked the question, does the mouse show the same thing that the humans do? And so that's what this shows here, is that we have mice who have 2 copies of what we might call the bad version. And we have mice that have 2 copies of what we might call the good version. And then we have some mice who have 1 of each. And over here on this left side, we're showing how much alcohol they drink. And this one, these are the females and these are the males. And what you can see is that in the females, the mice who have 2 copies of the good version, they drink less than the female mice who have 1 or 2 copies of the bad version. But interestingly, you see that we don't have a difference in the males. So we're still trying to understand what that means. And this is the same thing over here. This is just 2 different measures of how much they drink. And so these are my students who worked on this project. But the cool thing about this is that basically this mouse that we made that has special genetic factors, it appears to be doing a good job of modeling what was found in the human genetic studies. Does that kind of make sense? So that's one of the ways that we can use animals to study it. And now we can study the biology in the mice, in their liver and in their brain. And so the other thing that we do is we are looking at a whole bunch of different kinds of rats. And this is kind of a big, long study, but basically we test them for their pain sensitivity. And then we see how much they give themselves a drug that people often are given like after surgery. A lot of times you'll get if you have a lot of pain, they'll give you this drug to help reduce your pain. And so but then you can become addicted to it where you can't really stop taking the drug. And so again, this is the same pathway where you take a little bit, but then it builds up until it's out of control. And so this is my student who's doing this study. And in this case, we're testing rats. And the rats, I'm just going to show you these measures that we do where we're measuring their response to these little pain. And so what we've done is we've measured, these are all different genetic versions. These are rats that have different genomes. So their overall genomes are different. And this is measuring this. Let me see if I can show you. Can you see the video? So this is underneath the rat, and you just give them a little shock on their paw, and you see when they pick their paw up. And so you're basically asking, like, how much does it take before they pick their paw up? And so what you can see here is that some of them are very sensitive and they pick their paw up right away with a very low amount of signal. And some of them are not as sensitive. And so they don't pick their paw up as fast. So that's kind of a measure of pain. And it's one of the things that we're trying to understand because we'd like to be able to help people manage their pain better. And then this is another measure of pain in the rats. And so again, this measure differs according to the genetics of the rat that we're studying. And in this case, what we do is we take their tail and we put it into warm water. It's not boiling, it's just pretty warm. And you wait till it does that little flick with did you see that little flick with its tail? So you put it in there and you see how long it goes before it flicks the tail. And so this is like, does it take these animals are very sensitive. They flick their tail very quickly, but these animals take longer to flick their tail. So what we're trying to do is find the genes that are different in these different rats so that we can maybe identify genes that might be the same as some of the genes in people that are involved in that. So I think that's pretty much the end of what I was going to show you. But I'm happy to answer questions if you guys want to ask any questions.
Yeah, Girl Scouts, do you have any questions? Lily or Rebel? No, I do have a question. So with all the things that you're using in your lab, how often does technology change?
Oh,
And
that's a very good question.
the things
Yeah.
that you're using can speed up things or can make you look at things
So
differently.
that's a great question. So technology does change very quickly, just like computers change quickly. And when you're allowed to get a phone, you'll see that your phone changes quickly. But the technology also changes. So when I was a new professor 20 years ago, I got this very expensive piece of equipment that was like $50,000. And we put that into my lab. And now we really probably haven't used that for like 10 years. So we only used it for like about seven years or so. And now that piece of equipment has to go off, somewhere else.
Right.
It's not really very effective anymore. But it does kind of depend. I mean, there's still some of the behavioral things that we do haven't changed a whole lot. So it does kind of depend on what it is. And the important thing to remember is that statistics don't change. So once you learn how to do statistics, the basic math, some of the math stuff, they can get more complicated. We develop new approaches for applying those statistics, but the basic statistics doesn't change. And so that's a really great thing to learn how to do, no matter what field of research you go into.
Right.
Yeah.
Rebel and Lily, do you guys like doing experiments at home? Yeah, that's pretty fun, right? Cooking is even an experiment.
It is, yeah.
You look at your recipe and you go, I'm going to try something a little different. If I add
Lily,
this.
what grade are you in? Lily's half asleep. What grade are you in, Lily? Third grade. Are you 8 then? Are you 8 years old? Okay. And do you live in Colorado? Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah.
So it's not too late for you.
Yeah. Well, and in Girl Scouting, it's very common for Girl Scouts to experiment and try things and then know if it doesn't succeed, it's okay.
That's right.
You go back and try again. And I'm sure that must happen in your lab
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, especially when people are new, so sometimes even, with our new students, I always try to make it clear that it's okay if they make a mistake, when they're setting up an experiment, if it's okay to make a mistake, and you want to admit that you made it. So anytime you make a mistake, it's important to admit that you made it. And that's going to be a lot better than if you try to hide it. So I think that's true for, like, if you have a disagreement with someone and you say something that wasn't very nice, you always want to go back and say that you're sorry and say, I admit that I said something not very nice, and then try to go on from there. It's the same thing with a job or with an experiment. Like, people are going to make mistakes, but you want to just admit it.
Yeah, people might respect you more.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? They can trust you because you admit mistakes and you celebrate wins. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Great. Yeah. Well, girls, do you have any? I want to make sure that we don't miss any questions. If you have any questions or you want to know more about you're a little bit of ways away from college.
Yes, ways
but
away.
keep experimenting and thinking through all your years up to college and investigating what you might want to do and be, and that can change, and it's okay for it to change and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for coming tonight, Marissa. Thank you so much for talking with us and the Girl Scouts. And Girl Scouts, I hope I'll see you on another Inspiring Futures.
Thank you.
It was nice to meet you guys.
All right. Good night.